violated. Where do we stand? Are we really safe? And who is providing us security? The Nagaland government or the government of India? Let us delve deeper into this issue with a discussion with our senior journalist, Mr. Al, and put forth before you the situations at hand and see how Nagaland is going ahead with its policies. Hello, Sir Al.
Hello, good morning.
Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Lee.
Sir, given this situation that we have and the FIR that was lodged by the DIO and which was backed by the Foothill Nanu Talungjam and the Our Youth Forum from Difupa, how do we take this issue? How do we take this issue, sir?
I think, Lee, you might not know, but during our days, it was actually taboo for the Naga armed organizations to kidnap Naga people, Naga persons who are civilians, who are non-combatant.
Yes, sir.
So those days, especially during the 80s and the 90s, the civilians, Nagas who were not with any other group or at least not perceived to be supporting any, generally they were kept on the sidelines. They were kept safe from all these criminal activities, and the people who were targeted the most were non-Naga people.
Yes, sir. And
especially business persons. So during those times, it was, I don't remember, and I don't remember being talked about. And of course, they extorted from politicians. But the idea of kidnapping Naga entrepreneurs was just something out of the ordinary, because those days they had a code of some sort. Of course, there were certain incidents here and there involving Naga entrepreneurs, but it was not as overt as what we have slowly started seeing in Nagaland. And the threats against the contractors, Naga business persons, have been continuing over the past about 10 years now, unlike what it used to be. And over these many years, I think one of the reasons why the Naga undergrounds could get away, and even now I think they could get away with their criminal activities, was that Nagaland has never had a strong government, weak governance, weak law enforcement, and there was a lot of politics behind all these justice enforcement mechanisms, so they could always get away with it. So now when we look at what is happening in Dimapur now, the youths are rising up. The students' organizations are going to the police, something that people never did before. So I think suffice to say, people are getting tired. And we are tired of being harassed. We are tired of always being put to the end of the gun. We're tired of being made to feel less than a citizen, less than a Naga, less than a person. You cannot just come in and take over my business or tell me to pay something for which you did not give me any service. You have no right to encroach into my emotional boundaries and put fear in my family, in me.
Okay. So
people are tired, and that is the reason why, if you ask me how do we deal with this issue, there are political issues that are to be seen and viewed through the eyes of political negotiations, dialogue, through the eyes of political tactics. But there are also things that we do that fall into criminal premises. There's a difference between a crime, and there's a difference between crime, and there are differences between political dialogues and political stance making here.
Exactly, sir. So that's where the question arises, sir. See, the question at hand right now is like the FIR was lodged because of the incident, But according to our sources, it has come to light that the demand for yearly tax by the NACN NICI group was happening since the starting of this year 2024, and then it was demanded from a packaged drinking water manufacturer, which let us say is our own entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur. So given the circumstances that we have at hand and the demands that they make, like, how is it justified that the government that we say is fighting for our freedom is a hampering obstacle for the development of its own youth, sir? How is it justified?
I think there was a point of time during the mid-2000s when one of the NACN factions said that they will not be exacting tax from NAGA entrepreneurs who had recently joined or were in the business for at least 3 years. So this group, I do not know which faction it was, but they issued a notice saying we are not going to take any tax from these entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs who have started business for only till or under 3 years. So, well, technically speaking, whether you are the NACN factions, whether you are the United States of India, America, or the government of India, or the government of Nagaland, whoever you are not supposed to tax people to whom you don't give any service.
Yes, sir.
You pay raw taxes because the government makes roads for you, for your use.
Yes, sir.
You pay water bills because that water was brought to you by the government through certain facilities and infrastructure. You pay electricity tax or bills because that electricity was bought somewhere by the government. So technically, whoever you are, whether you are the President of the United States or the government of India or NIFIRIO, nobody should be taxing you for something that was not provided for you. It could be service, it could be consultations, it could be some skill training, I don't know, whatever, it could be a road. So you should not be taxed in the first place. And I think we have been manipulating the word tax for a long time that we are so used to it.
Yes.
Anything that you have to pay the services of which was not given to you is extortion. It does not mean just the NAGA underground organizations. It could be if you go down to the shop and you ask for something, and then it's 10 rupees. But if you pay that person only 5 rupees, that's also another form of extortion.
Yes, sir.
So I think we need to just look at the term extortion and taxes here before we go into the legalities of it. And if we define the definition clearly, then we will have clarity to define the legality of that action behind.
Yes, sir. So, see, pertaining to this situation at hand and what has gone down, it has come to light that most of the NAGA entrepreneurs, they are unwilling to pay these such called NAGA tax.
Because they cannot survive.
Yes, sir. Exactly. So that is the question at hand, because 28 factions are there right now, and if a NAGA entrepreneur decides to pay a tax to all the 28 the governments, the factions, then how will the entrepreneur earn? How will he manage?
He won't manage. He will have to start looking for a government job. I mean, I've said this over and over again, and thousands of us know. The reason why NAGA entrepreneurs are not growing, of course, there are a lot of different elements of arguments here that can be brought here, why we are not prospering.
Yes.
But one of the main reasons is the so-called taxes. I've talked about this many times too, and given a lot of examples, and I know it. I've been in the media for a long time. I know the sights and sounds of history at least 20 years back. And taxation is one of the reasons why NAGA youths are not venturing into it. Because even if they have capital, they have to start a very long way off. The struggle is very hard. I used to know a friend who used to make about, she used to have an electronic store, Lee, and she used to make about, she was just starting off initially, maybe about 15,000, 16,000 a month.
Yes, sir.
And then the underground started coming and they demanded 50,000 per month. Within 2 weeks, she shut down.
Yes, sir.
And she had to start looking for a government job, and now she is with the government, thankfully. But there are many dreams that have been killed by the Naga underground organizations, so-called taxations. Of course, if you're going to help set up business, if you're going to provide services of some kind that would add directly to the revenue or to the growth of the company or the business, why not? But you don't give anything and you just ask and you take all the time. That's why Naga youths are not growing in the area of business. And I think Naga youths are educated now. Yes. They know the difference between tax and extortion, so they're also not willing to pay. They're not going to go that extra mile, in the sense that if they go that extra mile, putting in money into places they should not be putting in, then I think it will be harder for them to regain their capital, let alone run the business also.
Very
and
true.
You can ask any Naga entrepreneur, especially the young ones, they will say, taxation ra na pare hoi jaise. And I know many, even among my family too, who have given up.
Sir, in line with what you have just stated, I would like to ask you one particular question, that we are all aware that the government, the central government, is trying to uplift the uneducated, or let's say the unemployed youth, the educated unemployed youth, and all the sectors with many different policies. Let's say MSME as the biggest example, MSME projects. So the central government provides funds, gives a startup fund for MSME programs. But as we just discussed, once they start up their business, they are taxed. Now, how does one go about it? How can one tackle it?
I think that's a wonderful question for which we need business people, actually, especially our young entrepreneurs, to come in and just have a talk with them. It will be a wonderful, they're going to give us a lot of insight. I'm not qualified to speak much on that because I'm not an entrepreneur. For me, I see only the suffering they go through, their complaints and their pains and their businesses shutting down only. So that much though I cannot explain, but what I know is that if there is weak law and order governance, if there is weak justice administration, the kind that we have right now in the Nagaland government, all these taxations, extortions, all these kidnappings and ransomings and all these threats and bloodshed will continue. And the reason why the wheat is growing is because there's no farmer weeding them out. There's no one to take care of the field. So it's just growing wild everywhere. So law enforcement is very important here. The ministers will just sit there and say, okay, do this and do that, but actually the political will for enforcement should come from the ministers itself. They just blame the police all the time, but the police also do not act on their own all the time. There are things, a leadership that has to be provided by the state government, and that leadership can come only from a strong government, which we don't have. We don't have opposition, and that's why we are one of the weakest. So I cannot speak much. Maybe one day we should just organize a panel with entrepreneurs and discuss all these issues together. And because this is going to affect us in the long run. We're going to be, I mean, I don't know. I don't see a prosperous Nagaland in the next 20 years, 30 years.
I understand you, sir. But on the grounds of the recent statements that were made, that NSCN Nikki has now violated the ceasefire agreement. How does it go ahead now? Now, what is up ahead for it, and what would be the outcome of this statement that was made by the Indian government?
I think it's not just the Nikki faction. I think And to be fair, we should not be singling out only one faction or this faction, because we have had this problem for a long time, and this is not with only one faction. There are a lot of other people, whether their command knows it or not, but even we have experienced it personally too, what is going on at the ground. So it's not just with one faction, many of them, and I think many of them are just free-willing without the knowledge of their superiors also. That's also one thing. And of course we had the issue in regard to the contractor in Kohima also, that was by a different faction. And then during those days, 80s and 90s, there was only two major groups, the NACN Kaplang and the NACN Isaac Muiva. So anytime something happened, you don't have to really look anywhere. And then over the past about 20 years now, we have about more than 20 NACN factions or NNC factions. So it is not just about one group, and I think almost all the groups have their hands blackened in this regard. But what we can do here is, I think there has to be some kind of an oversight for the ceasefire monitoring group also. And if I'm not mistaken, I have read somewhere an agreement of one of the factions and the government of India. I think, yeah, it was way back 2008 or so. And one of the points that was mentioned was that they should not impose monetary demands or something like that. I don't know if the rules have been revised, but something like that. So I think it's not just in terms of extortions, but other activities that should not be engaged in, especially when it comes to property and life of private citizens. So it's not only with one group. So we need an oversight for the monitoring group, for each of the groups. And I think we need to also have a strong leadership at the government to be able to enforce law and order, especially at the district levels, because it's the police in the district that do all the work.
Okay, sir, to round up this conversation and this discussion, I would like to ask you one final question, and let me get to know your thoughts on this. What is the future for Naga entrepreneurs now that the so-called Naga government, Nagaland government has resorted to using violence and started to use force to extract its taxes? As we know, any government can impose tax, but to get that tax, usage of force is, I don't think it's justified. So what is the future for the Naga entrepreneurs?
Yeah, the aspect of force is there in the definition of tax for Nagaland. That's why it's called extortion, because you are paying something for which you did not receive any service. I don't know what is the way for Nagaland. As long as we have a weak government, and as long as we have weak law enforcement agencies, and as long as the people keep silent, I think whatever that we are experiencing right now, the threats, the kidnappings, and the bloodshed, I think they will continue even in the future too. I think the community needs to really sit together and talk about all these issues. Otherwise, just expecting the government to work this out will not really work also. And on the part of the NACN factions, NNCs and the FGNs, whichever they are, I think they need to understand that they exist only because of the support of the people, or at least at one point of time. And without the people, they don't have a cause. Without the people, they don't have a direction.
Yes, sir.
And I think they should understand that they are not above the lives of the people. They're not above the law also. And I think they should understand. I'm currently reading a book by Sandeep Chakravarti. And it's a book about the insurgency in the northeast region. And he mentions how, and it's not just the writer of a book mentioning it, we all know it. The Naga factions, each of them claiming to be the original one, each of them claiming to have that one pure cause representing the people, each one of them claim to represent the people, but each one of them also do not hesitate to impose taxes on the people for which they don't provide any services, and which is the reason why the people are also not happy with the NAGA factions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining with us and giving your insight into this matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee.
So, as we all know that the government is always by the people, for the people, and of the people. So, going ahead with that narrative, we all need to question ourselves that whether is it considered a tax or extortion. What is the big question is there, and how are the Naga youths going to go ahead with all these things happening in Nagaland, in our own homeland? With all these questions at hand, the answer lies in your hands. With this news report, we will be continuing with our news. This is Lee Chang, and keep watching Hornbill TV.